Thank you, John. Thank you, Bank Hall, for having me here today. Ladies and gentlemen, have you had a good morning? Yes. Fantastic. Are you ready for a great afternoon? Yes. Excellent. Welcome to risk-taking and decision-making in poker, business and life with myself, Caspar Berry. I hope in some way most of you agree with it. All of what we're talking about here today is that subject of risk and risk-taking. George certainly threw a bit of a curveball around that subject, didn't he, when he talked about his own background in motorsport. I think risk can be a great thing to embrace in our lives. The trouble is, whether it's as George does it or as anyone does it, it can be dangerous. Things can happen when we embrace this thing, not always the thing that we thought would happen when we woke up that morning. I'm sure some of you remember this photo. It went round on email about 7 years ago, and there was some debate about whether it was real or not. In the end, the photographer won an award. So I think it is a real photo, ladies and gentlemen, but I don't think that is. But that is someone taking risk. They're taking risk in their life. I don't think that is a real photo. But these people are taking risk in their lives, whether we like it or not. Risk is definitely something. That is a real photo, terrifyingly. So is that. Doesn't look a lot there. It looks a lot more risky in that context, doesn't it? Risk is definitely something we can choose to embrace in our lives. But it's quite a slippery word, that word risk, because risk is also something that can happen to us, whether we like it or not. Sometimes it's just going to happen to one poor, unfortunate person or individual. It doesn't make it any less painful if that person happens to be you. Sometimes it's going to happen in quite personal, intimate moments, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes very intimate. We don't want this sort of thing to happen. Sometimes much more public and embarrassing. It's going to strike us. This gentleman found out the subject of a photo story in the Daily Mail. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Daily Mail, we do not want any of those things to happen to us as a result of today. And therefore, as John said in his introduction, I'm going to try and contain this subject of risk to a much safer world, safer probably even than the financial world, to the world of poker. That's the world I'm going to use as my metaphor. So I'm not going to ask anyone for any sort of participation. Do not worry. But quick show of hands, who here plays poker or has played poker in the past? OK, about a third of you, I would say. Who here, therefore, by contrast, has never, ever played poker in their lives? Excellent. I think we've got the first bluff of the day from a few of you there, haven't we? I'm looking at you, sir. You'd be the one I'd be worried about. As John said, I was a professional player for 3 years of my life, living and working at the tables in Las Vegas. It was a wonderful experience. It's really the things that I learnt, I would say, about life and about risk-taking during that period that I want to share with you today. Actually, that wasn't the highlight of my poker playing life. That came in 3 weeks in the spring of 2006 out in Prague when I was the poker advisor on the old James Bond movie Casino Royale. Has anyone here seen the film? Yeah, it's crap, isn't it? But it was a great experience. And obviously I was very privileged to be asked to do it because there's a lot of competition for that. As I'm sure some of you know, poker is massively changing. Even before the poker boom, 50 million Americans claim to play poker on at least a monthly basis. And that has hugely changed in the last 6 years with the advent of internet poker that has massively changed the shape of the game. More and more women have got into the game, which broadly speaking, I think is a good thing. More and more young people also playing the game now. I do have mixed feelings about this, folks. It's slippery slope that I worry about. How long before we see something of that nature? He's having a good time. That doesn't make it right. What I really want to do today, actually, is just use poker as a springboard, as I said, to jump into the broader context of business and life. So I'm not going to talk too much about the game, and it might confuse people who've never played here. But I do want to bust one myth, I think one myth about poker. Because in the summer of '99, everybody asked me, when I decided to be a professional player, one question only, and that was, let's see your poker face. That was the question that I got asked. And actually, your poker face is a much smaller part of the game than people might imagine. Look, you can see this guy's doing everything he can to cover up his face. The fact that you can play online at all shows that it must be much less about interaction than about something else. This guy, Lane Flack, made a whole brand out of the hooded top and the shades. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be playing poker outside these doors after dinner tonight. I do expect as many of you as possible to come and join us. We'll give you all a beginner to win a lesson, so no experience necessary. And if you've got the equipment, do come dressed like that. That's going too far, all right? We don't want to see any of that. Let's keep it clean, folks. But what are you trying to do tonight and whenever you play poker? Essentially, you're just making a series of decisions. A decision that you need to make every 90 seconds, a decision that you can't abdicate, that you can't procrastinate, that you cannot delegate, a decision that you must make. And it was that process of forced decision-making, if you like, for 3 years of my life that I found absolutely fascinating. What was it that was bringing me to the conclusions that I came to? Why were those conclusions sometimes different to the players around me when faced with exactly the same situation? To put it a little bit more philosophically, why was I doing what I was doing? That's really the question I want to ask today. How do we make decisions? Let's just think a little bit about the decisions that we make. The very first decision that we all make every single day is, of course, whether or not to press that snooze button. That's the very first one. What to wear, what to eat, how we get to work that day. Once we're at work, in fact, the subject of some of this morning's conversations, how we allocate our time. These are massive decisions that we're making. Some people here must have to take meetings, and both internally and externally. Some people may have to hire people or fire people. Even if you don't have to do that, it might be a question of navigating your own route through your career and your life. And those start to bleed into quite big personal life decisions. Who to spend our very brief time on this planet with. That's quite a spectrum there, from the smallest to the largest. So let me just say a couple of things about decisions and decision making before we go further. The first thing is, in the 8 years since I stopped being a professional poker player, it's been my privilege to work with hundreds of companies all over the world on that subject of decisions and decision making. And I say to all of them what I say to you now, which is that it's not for me to say what decisions you should be making and taking. You are all experts in this field, a field about which I know far less than you, and of course you are all experts in your own lives. Only you can be the judge of the decisions that you make. But it is my job during this 30 minutes to provoke you, to catalyse some thought, hopefully some thoughts which I expect will continue, I would love them to, after this session, maybe even after today. And that provocative question that I'm therefore going to use to stimulate those thoughts is this, ladies and gentlemen. Are the decisions that you are making the best decisions to get you to wherever it is that you want to get to? I say that again. Are the decisions that you're making individually, collectively, with your teams, with your colleagues, with your family, with your friends, the best decisions to get you all to your chosen outcome or stated goal? Or, conversely, is something stopping you from making and taking those optimal decisions, those decisions which maximize productivity and efficiency and shorten the amount of time that it's going to take to get you to that destination? Are they external? Are they internal obstacles? I also want to put a phrase out there which may, for some people, change the way you think about all the decisions that you make. It's a phrase which I think everyone has been touching on throughout the course of this morning, and I know we touched on it in the conversations this afternoon, and it's this. All decisions are investment decisions. All decisions are investment decisions. We tend to think about that word, certainly among this community, as being the allocation of that great scarce resource that is money, usually for a period of time. That's what investment is. But money is just one of many scarce resources that we're allocating at any given moment. Of course, the great scarce resource that we all have is time itself. Sometimes we measure that very rationally in hours, minutes, and seconds, sometimes more emotionally in terms of our attention, our passion, our energy, our dedication to a person or a project or a scheme or an idea. Our degree of comfort. Our health is a scarce resource. Our liberty, even our life, is on the line there. I hope that doesn't describes most of the decisions that you make, but certainly as George is hurtling down that mountain, it's there to be lost. And the great scarce resource that is on the line whenever we make a decision in an organisation, witnessed by our friends and our peers and our colleagues, is status, standing, reputation, what Asian cultures call face, the loss of which can be a massive impediment to making the best decisions possible. In fact, we don't even need to be witnessed by other people. We have a sense of our own self-respect and self-esteem, and we don't measure this resource in pounds, shilling, and pence, but we have a sense of what it might be like to gain more, or how it might feel to lose some of what we have. All decisions are investment decisions, allocations of scarce resources under conditions of uncertainty. And therefore, I'm trying to sell you the fact that actually this is what we do when we play poker every single day. We make a decision, we project ourselves into an unknown future, just as we do, whether it's a decision we make in a split second or over 3 months, and we ask ourselves, what might be the consequences or rewards of making this particular investment? In poker, the great news is that we have some information right there in the middle of the table, is the pot. That's our upside. That's what's there to be won. And that's good. We don't always have that information in life, but on the poker table we do. And we also invariably have another piece of information, which is the amount of investment that we must make right now. Of course, in business and life, that could get a lot bigger. Worst case scenario, this could blow up in our face, and what kind of reputational damage could it cause? But in terms of time and money and energy, we know that we need to make a particular investment at this stage. But whether it's poker or business or life, the next line is more difficult. Because, of course, we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know if we're going to lose that money or whether we're going to win the pot. We make all these decisions under conditions of uncertainty. So let's explore uncertainty for a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Not surprisingly, let's use the metaphor of poker, if you like. There are two main uncertainties in the game of poker. The first uncertainty, which I think has its corollary in the lives that we live, is our opponent's hole cards. What is it about the game right now that we can't see? If we could, it would be a completely unrecognisably different game. In fact, in many ways, the game of poker is just the assessment of what our opponent's hole cards could be. And I think this just represents the things about any given situation that we don't know or fully understand at any time. We might need more knowledge or information. For many people here, that might take the form of data. It might be traders need to know what's going on around the world in terms of current affairs. And we've always had this thirst for knowledge, I would argue. We've always had gossip over the back garden fence and a degree of interest in the world around us. Now, of course, that gossip has gone global with Twitter, and we desire to know as much as possible about the world. I think about 6 months ago in this country, we had an interesting court case which exposed this desire when someone stopped us from knowing something. Now, we might not have cared about the subject at hand, his sex life, but we objected to the fact that someone could stop us having access to this information. Google, I think, is a $150 billion monument to our desire to know more about the world. That's the first uncertainty that we're dealing with every day. The second uncertainty that we tend to relate to when we use that word uncertainty is, of course, the uncertain future. And this is represented in poker by the cards that are yet to come. And I think whether we work in the world of finance or not, we're always thinking about these uncertainties. In this country, we're obsessed with the weather and, again, exactly how our day will pan out. Right now, of course, financial uncertainties are affecting everyone. In which direction will those graphs go? How will this particular business deal or meeting go? These are the things that we're thinking about all the time. And, of course, in the last few years, uncertainties that we don't think about have been popularised. James mentioned them already. The black swans, the things that we didn't even know we didn't know. The things that we hadn't even considered might happen. That's kind of an example of a black swan affecting him, but I hope it's not a pure black swan, ladies and gentlemen, because I hope that he has taken some sort of mitigating or protective action to ameliorate the pains. That's more of a black swan, ladies and gentlemen. That is completely from left field, and that's the kind of thing that we wouldn't even expect might happen. Actually, I think there's a whole other category of unknowns, uncertainties that we're thinking about at a subconscious level, not consciously in the forefront of our mind, doesn't dominate our every working day, but we're thinking about it, and it's of concern to everybody here in this room. It is, of course, the end game, the retirement. What will it look like? Will it be the idyll that we all imagine it to be? Will it make this journey somehow worthwhile? Or will the world look a completely different place by the time we get there?